Greetings, Gilk! Hi! I loved your last video, and I think that feminism is a super interesting topic, so I'm glad that you are interested in it and learning about the realms of feminism. It's great. I totally agree that it's a dirty word, especially in the United States, and I think that that's really a shame because I think that people just don't understand what it means. I mean, Webster says, and I quote, that it is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. So equality, right? So it's not women against men. It's equal. Anyways, so I think that in the United States, people are becoming more and more aware of feminism and of women's rights because women's rights are being taken away, and it's scary. The law that you mentioned in Arizona is just one example of the attacks on women and women's rights that are happening all throughout the United States, and it is not okay with me because this is my body, and I want to make decisions about it. You don't get to make decisions about it, you men, politicians. No, my body. Anyways, I could go on and on about this for a really long time, but there's a quote by Rebecca West that I want to read, and that will sum it up perfectly. And that is that I myself have never been able to find out precisely what feminism is. I only know that people call me a feminist whenever I express sentiments that differentiate me from a doormat. I feel like that sums it up perfectly. So moving on, I want to take a step back and still look at feminism, but look at it from a different angle today. I want to look at the privilege behind feminism, behind the word and behind what that actually means. And this is like a huge topic, and I wrote a paper about at least a section of it, and it's really hard for me to explain, but I'm going to try to do it in under 10 minutes, which is going to be a small miracle. So if feminism is a dirty word, then oh my god, privilege like gets you kicked out of the house and you have to move in with your boyfriend. So like, I think that there's two reasons for this. I think one is that people don't understand what it means and it's associated with guilt, especially if you are a person who is privileged. And I think another reason is because it's easy, or at least it's a lot easier to look at people who have less than you, according to your perspective, and try to bring them up to where you are, than it is to think about where you are and think about maybe where I am socially, economically, politically. It isn't right or it isn't fair because nobody wants to live their life thinking that they're taking something away from someone else to live comfortably. Nobody wants that. But the fact of the matter is that it's true. And for the first time in generations and generations, children are going to have less than their parents do right now. And people know that. And that's why I think that we have to start looking at this sort of stuff because it's so relevant. And I will totally do a video about privilege at some point because it's an important topic and I work on a political campaign, so I have no time, but I will try really hard. But I'm going to move back to feminism because that's what we're talking about. So the actual word feminism seems pretty all-encompassing, right? It's about equality, but it's really not that simple because there are all these studies done in academia about like black feminism, indigenous feminism, queer feminism, and that's great. Good job, academia, for liking feminism. But there's one problem that I have with that, and that is why do we get to call our particular brand of feminism, white Western feminism, largely, why do we call that feminism? Why don't we get those little words at the beginning that black feminism does or indigenous feminism does? Why is it that we don't have to be specified? And I know you're thinking, Greta, you're crazy. You don't need to worry about that stupid word. Just whatever. It's women who like equality. But I'll explain to you why this is a problem to me. And that is because when we state that Western or white feminism is just feminism, we're saying that all other types of feminism have to fall under our white Western feminism category. And this is basically a way of saying if you want to be an empowered woman, you have to join our movement. And if you want to join our movement, you have to join our culture. And so this is why women all over the world, because there are women that aren't Western, and women in marginalized communities don't always jump on our crazy bra-burning wagon because it's really hard to be in a community of people who might admire you for your cultural background but won't actually validate your opinions or thoughts unless they match their own. It's a mold that you have to fit, and it's really difficult. So this is really hard to explain, so I'm going to tell a story to explain it. And this story comes from Australia. I lived in Australia to go to school, and as part of my school, we went to a bush camp with a mob a couple of hours outside of Byron Bay, where I was living and schooling. And so that's where this story comes from. There was an uncle who I would talk to every morning about just everything, right? And one morning I was talking to him about gender roles, because in Australia, there's men's business and there's women's business. So there are things that only men can do and there are things that only women can do. There are places only men can go and there are places only women can go. And this causes Western feminists to have panic attacks because, oh my God, it's not the same, so it must not be equal, right? Well, hold on. Let me finish my story. So I was talking to him about this, and he told me that the women's role is boss. And, I get all puffed up in my ego, just like, yeah, I am the boss. But then I'm like, well, wait, what does that mean for men? What's their role? And he's like, the men's role is to be strong enough to teach their children that the women are boss. And I'm just like, so you're excellent. But that's actually not the highlight of my story. The second part is that at the very end of our bush camp, there were two guys who brought some friends. They were younger. They were probably about my age, like 20, 21. And they were drinking, and they weren't supposed to on a bush camp. And we had all gone to bed, and they came and shook some tents and woke some girls up, and it kind of freaked us out. But then they fell asleep, and everything was fine, and we all went back to sleep. And so we told people about it in the morning, and we were just saying basically, oh, I'm so glad nothing happened. It's fine. Nothing happened. Interesting term, because that is not how it was viewed at all. Those men were asked to leave the bush camp, and not only our bush camp, but all bush camps. Gone. They were spoken to by the elders. We were spoken to by the elders. We were just brought into this community that was so open and accepting and just really brought us up as women. I forgot to mention that we were basically a group of women. Almost all of us were. And so it was just a really surreal experience, because if you think about this, if I had been in the States and I had gone camping with some guys and they had gotten drunk and came and shook my tent, and then I got up the next morning and I was like, I want an apology from you and I want you never to come camping ever again. No. I would be considered insane. So I want to just show you the cultural contrast between that. Because I think it's something that's really important to see and understand. Because someone could look at their culture and say it's really oppressive towards women, but look at the experience that I had. And so basically what I want to take away from this is that we Western feminists overlook something when we say that a culture is oppressive towards women. And what we're overlooking is our culture. Because Western feminism is born and fueled out of patriarchy, because as any Western feminist will tell you, Western society is patriarchal. But we don't realize that not all cultures in the world are like that. There are cultures out there that aren't patriarchal. And if we just are going to storm in and spread our feminist gospel without looking at what that means, we're overlooking something huge. And so, I want to distinguish really fast that the story that I told in Australia was with one mob, and I just want to clarify that because there are so many mobs all throughout Australia, and there's different experiences to be had with all of them. There are like hundreds and hundreds of them, so don't put that judgment on all Indigenous, Aboriginal in general, especially not in Australia. You get what I'm saying. Basically what I'm trying to illustrate is just that the gender hierarchy doesn't exist everywhere. And that when we assume that basically everything is complicated. Everything. Every culture is complicated. And when we go out and assume that other cultures are simple, that's really problematic because we're missing out. But when we go out and assume that our culture is simple enough to be right or to be good, that's even worse, because then we aren't even looking at our own stuff. And we all know that you can't do anything unless you look at your own stuff first. So basically, yeah, that's my rant for today. Thanks for listening. My tidbit is these women, click the link. They are cool old grandmas that are singing about consensual rape, and they're hysterical, so please watch them. They're awesome. And my question of the day is, if you could be in a different country right now that wasn't the United States, where would you be? I would say Costa Rica because I'm missing my ticos and I'm missing my gallo pinta and my Julieta and all that. Or I would say Argentina because Argentina's calling my name, baby. So yeah, that's about it. I hope you have a lovely week and I cannot wait for your next video to appear. Mwah! Much love. Adios.